And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Jesse, of course, is the Director of Antiquities for Gen 6 Productions, along with our friend Stephen Quayle. It's a documentary production company. Jesse has been investigating paranormal activity for almost 10 years. Jesse, how did you get involved in paranormal investigating?
Well, everything began, George, when, 10 years ago, when I went to a small town where my father was born. It's called, there's a probability that the listeners may not understand, but I'm going to say the name of this small town. It's called Chupicuaro and Acámbaro, Guanajuato. And there was word that there was artifacts being discovered within this area, but soon after I had heard about this, I have a cousin of mine who lives in Mexico City who bought some land south of this particular little village town that I just mentioned. And this piece of land that he bought, it was probably at the time about 10 acres. They repossessed the land from him.
Oh, they did? Oh.
Yes. But at that time, while it was still in his name and he still had access to it, it was, like I said, it was about 10 acres. One night there was a storm, and the water was coming down incessantly, and it just, the winds were blowing hard, and it softened up a mountain that was on his property, and it created a landslide. And some of the workers that he had on his property, they contacted my cousin in Mexico City, who is a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, and they let him know that they had made some strange discoveries on his property. And so my cousin, that same weekend, he made his way to his property to see what his people were talking about and making reference to. And it turned out that some of the artifacts that they showed him had oval-shaped, almond-eyed extraterrestrial beings.
Jeez.
And once he took possession of the artifacts, he called me on the phone, and this was 10 years ago. He called me on the phone, and he said, "Hey, can I come see you?" I said, "Sure, no problem." He said, "Can you pick me up in the airport in Tijuana?" So I went to Tijuana. I had no idea what. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he comes down, and I pick him up in Tijuana. And it's customary for here in Mexico, when you pick up a family member, you take the suitcases from him and help him, into the car. And when he handed me one of the suitcases, I noticed it was extremely heavy, but I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, whatever, let's go. And we got to my house, and he opened one of these suitcases, and how he got him through the airport, I don't know.
That's a good question.
Yeah. And he opened the suitcase, and he had 3 different pieces. And at that time, when he showed these artifacts to me, I didn't know what I was looking at. I had no idea. I started looking at the hieroglyphs and the picture, the iconography on these artifacts, and it was displaying, extraterrestrial beings with different types. But the most common one would be the gray alien, the 4 to 5 foot, slender body, long neck,
yep.
big oval head, and almond eyes.
How old do you think the artifacts were, Jesse?
Okay, well, we've done some lab results, and the ones that I did have the opportunity to test, and I did this along with Steve Quayle. Me and him, we pushed on for such a we pushed on then, and we continue to push forward now. to mount the evidence and bring it to the people so that we can present the truth to them as to what it is that's really happening. But those artifacts, I'm not going to say the name of this guy. He's a pretty popular guy who we were able to get him to work with us, to join forces with us. I was working with him for probably about a year, and he had me sent him some of these artifacts, and what he said to me after I was able to get these artifacts into his hands, he said to me, "I will give you a response as to what or what the age through carbon testing is behind these artifacts." And after 2 weeks, when he was supposed to give me an answer, I guess the reptilian oligarchs who rule or run the standard narrative shut him down, and he disappeared. I was unable to get to make contact with him, and I continued to seek him out. And then sometime later, he was seen on doing his videos and making presentation of some of these artifacts, but communicating a different message than the type of message that I would communicate to the people. And it's the same message that I'm going to communicate to your audience tonight, George. But he went on his own platform, and he indicated with some of my artifacts, saying that he did some thermoluminescence testing, nuclear fusion, and C14 carbon dating.
Mm-hmm.
And he was claiming that the artifacts were from 9,000 years old.
Wow.
But
he stole your artifacts.
He did, but the thing is this, George, is that here's the thing, and this is why I believe that it's made it so difficult for us, is that the people there's probably right now off the top of my head, there's 6 different regions throughout Mexico where these artifacts are surfacing. And there's so many of them coming up that the government can't contain it. It's impossible for them to contain it. And one of the locations where I did one of my expeditions with Steve Quell and Gen 6 Productions, we went into the back of just the people who live within the community. It's in the Tula region of Allende. I think it's southeast of Mexico, where you'll find the Atlantis giant statues, and the archaeological site is in the dead center of the main town. But see, the thing is that the town was established there first before the archaeological site was discovered. Once the archaeological site was discovered, they fenced as much. They fenced as much of the zone as they possibly could, but there was already probably about 15 to 20,000 people who had already settled there after this location was discovered. And so, the government didn't think much of it and allowed the people to continue to remain as long as they were not going into the boundaries of the area and the location that they had fenced off, which they had declared, which they had prohibited for anybody to enter unless you had the proper access or authority to enter. But the thing is that fortunately for us, and when I say for us, is that fortunately for the people who deserve to know the truth, because we know that what they're giving us is not the truth. And we could get into that later, but let me just stay focused on what it is that I'm saying, that fortunately for us, the people were already established there. And when in Mexico, it's not the same as it is in the U.S., George. It's like in the U.S., you buy your home built already. in Mexico, when a new town, or they call them pueblitos, when they're established, you know, the people, the homeowners, they buy a piece of land and they construct their house, you know, from scratch. And throughout the years, these people, as people began to settle there, while they were building their houses, their homes, they began to make discoveries, and they continue to happen, and they continue to happen. And the places where I did my expeditions on the second one, once again, I'll repeat it. It's in Allende, Tula, Mexico. This place, the place where I chose to dig was actually approximately about 11 kilometers away from the actual archaeological site. And one of the places that I chose to dig, it was through homeowners that were reporting artifacts being surfaced. And some of the people that were working with me, that worked with me on this project, not the first one, because me and Steve, we've done 2 expeditions in the past 2 years. This one in Tula, I was fortunately enough to get some of the archaeologists that were already working for the ENOC, which is the Institution of History and Anthropology, which would be the equivalent of what would be the Smithsonian, but they operate a little slightly different. You know, the reason I was able to get these guys to collaborate with me so I can get into the locations necessary in order for me to extract these artifacts was because, you know, they don't get paid enough. It's
right.
It's a difficult thing.
Well, Jesse, who do you think made the artifacts? The indigenous people of that era?
I believe that okay. There's different types of artifacts that I've discovered. I have had the privilege to observe and study, research, and even, like I just mentioned, send to the lab some of these artifacts. And then you'll have the clay artifacts, and then you have different types of rocks, which would be flint rock, alabaster, serpentine jade, imperial jade. I believe that the more complicated rock, or the more sophisticated type of stone, like the.
And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Jesse, of course, is the Director of Antiquities for Gen 6 Productions, along with our friend Stephen Quayle. It's a documentary production company. Jesse has been investigating paranormal activity for almost 10 years. Jesse, how did you get involved in paranormal investigating?
Well, everything began, George, when, 10 years ago, when I went to a small town where my father was born. It's called, there's a probability that the listeners may not understand, but I'm going to say the name of this small town. It's called Chupicuaro and Acámbaro, Guanajuato. And there was word that there was artifacts being discovered within this area, but soon after I had heard about this, I have a cousin of mine who lives in Mexico City, who bought some land south of this particular little village town that I just mentioned. And this piece of land that he bought, it was probably at the time about 10 acres. They repossessed the land from him.
Oh, they did? Oh.
Yes. But at that time, while it was still in his name and he still had access to it, it was, like I said, it was about 10 acres. One night there was a storm, and the water was coming down incessantly, and it just, the winds were blowing hard, and it softened up a mountain that was on his property, and it created a landslide. And some of the workers that he had on his property, they contacted my cousin in Mexico City, who is a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, and they let him know that they had made some strange discoveries on his property. And so my cousin, that same weekend, he made his way to his property to see what his people were talking about and making reference to. And it turned out that some of the artifacts that they showed him had oval-shaped, almond-eyed extraterrestrial beings.
Jeez.
And once he took possession of the artifacts, he called me on the phone, and this was 10 years ago. He called me on the phone, and he said, "Hey, can I come see you?" I said, "Sure, no problem." He said, "Can you pick me up in the airport in Tijuana?" So I went to Tijuana. I had no idea what. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he comes down, and I pick him up in Tijuana, and it's customary for here in Mexico, when you pick up a family member, you take the suitcases from him and help him, into the car. And when he handed me one of the suitcases, I noticed it was extremely heavy, but I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, whatever, let's go. And we got to my house, and he opened one of these suitcases, and how he got him through the airport, I don't know.
That's a good question.
Yeah. And he opened the suitcase, and he had 3 different pieces. And at that time, when he showed these artifacts to me, I didn't know what I was looking at. I had no idea. I started looking at the hieroglyphs and the picture, the iconography on these artifacts, and it was displaying, extraterrestrial beings with different types. But the most common one would be the gray alien, the 4 to 5 foot, slender body, long neck,
yep.
big oval head, and almond eyes.
How old do you think the artifacts were, Jesse?
Okay, well, we've done some lab results, and the ones that I did have the opportunity to test, and I did this along with Steve Quayle. Me and him, we pushed on for we pushed on then, and we continue to push forward now to mount the evidence and bring it to the people so that we can present the truth to them as to what it is that's really happening. But those artifacts, I'm not going to say the name of this guy's he's a pretty popular guy who we were able to get him to work with us, to join forces with us. I was working with him for probably about a year, and he had me sent him some of these artifacts, and what he said to me after I was able to get these artifacts into his hands, he said to me, "I will give you a response as to what or what the age through carbon testing is behind these artifacts." And after 2 weeks, when he was supposed to give me an answer, I guess the reptilian oligarchs who rule or run the standard narrative shut him down, and he disappeared. I was unable to get to make contact with him, and I continued to seek him out. And then sometime later, he was seen on doing his videos and making presentation of some of these artifacts, but communicating a different message than the type of message that I would communicate to the people. And it's the same message that I'm going to communicate to your audience tonight, George. But he went on his own platform, and he indicated with some of my artifacts, saying that he did some thermoluminescence testing nuclear fusion and C14 carbon dating.
Mm-hmm.
And he was claiming that the artifacts were from 9,000 years old.
Wow.
But
he stole your artifacts.
He did, but the thing is this, George, is that here's the thing, and this is why I believe that it's made it so difficult for us, is that the people there's probably right now off the top of my head, there's 6 different regions throughout Mexico where these artifacts are surfacing. And there's so many of them coming up that the government can't contain it. It's impossible for them to contain it. And one of the locations where I did one of my expeditions with Steve Quayle and Gen 6 Productions, we went into the back of just the people who live within the community. It's in the Tula region of Allende. I think it's southeast of Mexico, where you'll find the Atlantis giant statues, and the archaeological site is in the dead center of the main town. But see, the thing is that the town was established there first before the archaeological site was discovered. Once the archaeological site was discovered, they fenced as much. They fenced as much of the zone as they possibly could, but there was already probably about 15 to 20,000 people who had already settled there after this location was discovered. And so, the government didn't think much of it and allowed the people to continue to remain as long as they were not going into the boundaries of the area and the location that they had fenced off, which they had declared, which they had prohibited for anybody to enter unless you had the proper access or authority to enter. But the thing is that fortunately for us, and when I say for us, is that fortunately for the people who deserve to know the truth, because we know that what they're giving us is not the truth. And we could get into that later, but let me just stay focused on what it is that I'm saying, that fortunately for us, the people were already established there. And when in Mexico, it's not the same as it is in the U.S., George. It's like in the U.S., you buy your home built already. In Mexico, when a new town, or they call them pueblitos, when they're established, the people, the homeowners, they buy a piece of land and they construct their house, from scratch. And throughout the years, as people began to settle there, while they were building their houses, their homes, they began to make discoveries, and they continue to happen, and and the places where I did my expeditions on the second one, once again I'll repeat it, it's in Allende, Tula, Mexico. This place, the place where I chose to dig was actually approximately about 11 kilometers away from the actual archaeological site. And one of the places that I chose to dig, it was through homeowners that were reporting artifacts being surfaced. And some of the people that were working with me, that worked with me on this project, not the first one, because me and Steve, we've done 2 expeditions in the past 2 years. This one in Tula, I was fortunately enough to get some of the archaeologists that were already working for the ENA, which is the Institution of History and Anthropology, which would be the equivalent of what would be the Smithsonian, but they operate a little slightly different. The reason I was able to get these guys to collaborate with me so I can get into the locations necessary in order for me to extract these artifacts was because they don't get paid enough. It's
right.
It's a difficult thing.
Well, Jesse, who do you think made the artifacts? The indigenous people of that era?
I believe that okay. There's different types of artifacts that I've discovered. I have had the privilege to observe and study, research, and even, like I just mentioned, send to the lab some of these artifacts. And then you'll have the clay artifacts, and then you have different types of rocks, which would be flint rock, alabaster, serpentine jade, imperial jade. I believe that the more complicated rock, or the more sophisticated type of stone, like the serpentine jade,
mm-hmm.
or the flint rock, I believe that those were made by hybrids, and I believe that some of them were assisted, and I believe that some humans were assisted and taught by actual extraterrestrial beings to make some of these artifacts. But I don't believe that an actual full, complete, pure human like me and you, George, was able to accomplish making some of these artifacts. And the reason why I say this is because when the first location where I did my first expedition, which is probably 500 miles south of Tula Allende in an extremely cartel-infested territory, state of Michoacan, there is this place called Lago de Quixeo, and it is a lake that runs and extends for approximately 17 to 20 miles. And the artifacts that I discovered there, George, were extremely mind-boggling in the sense that they are immaculately perfect in the way that they were designed, in the way that I observed the stone. It was the type of stone, in my opinion. This is the same type of artifact that I gave to this certain individual who ran them through the laboratories in Minnesota, and this is the same type of stone that I believe that cannot be made or functioned by the hands of men unless they were assisted
mm-hmm.
by something not of this world.
What do you think, Jesse, the purpose of the artifacts were? Were they left for us so we would know what happened, what these beings were like many years ago, 9,000 years ago? Why do you think they made them?
Okay, that's a good question. And my belief to this question, George, is that I believe that, the standard, I'm not going to stray away. It's important for me to say what I'm about to say right now, George. A lot of people think that there is a lot of people know and are aware of the fact that there is an alien deception coming, that there is an alien invasion coming. But from what I see and when I make observation of people online who give these presentations, and I'm not trying to bash on nobody, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making this conclusion based upon my own personal observation and experience on how I'm dealing with these artifacts and the discoveries that I've made. There's people thinking that when the alien invasion comes, it's going to be a fake one. It's going to be orchestrated by blue beam type of technology, so on, et cetera. I just want to say to your people, I just want to share with you, George, and with your listeners, that what's coming upon this earth is this alien invasion that everybody expects, whether in the near or the distant future, is not going to be a fake one. It's going to be a real one.
It's the real deal, isn't it?
It's going to be the real deal. They're already here, and we could get into that in a little bit. But the thing is that your question was, why do I think these artifacts were made? Well, like I was saying, is that I believe that this earth truly, genuinely belongs to us. And I believe that when this earth was created and we were created in it, that it was created for us to dwell here. It was created for us to dwell, to rule, and to subdue the land. And these entities, the reason why, and I'm going to connect this, George, to current events, to what's happening right now.
How many artifacts might there have been, Jesse?
Well, from the time that I began investigating this, I can easily count it in the thousands. And even before me being on location and beginning to document this type of information to bring me to the point where it is that I'm at right now at this moment, in one of the locations where I had previously mentioned earlier, in Chupicuaro, Acámbaro, Guanajuato, there was this German, I believe there's this German immigrant who was living within the populace of these little towns where my father was born, and his name was Charles Red Waldemar, and this guy made a circumstantial amount of discoveries from different types of figurines. And earlier you asked me if I believe that humans made some of these artifacts, and I believe that the artifacts that are made out of clay, I do believe that those were made by humans, but that's what's even more interesting to me is that everybody knows this. It doesn't take a world-renowned historian to know that whatever depictions we see within the ancient cultures worldwide is what the people were seeing and what they were witnessing and what they were testifying. And even up to a certain point, it's now beginning to surface in our time, and it's what we're witnessing and it's what we're testifying in the skies. But when it comes to these many artifacts, to how many artifacts that I have seen them in the thousands. Like I said, George, that there's no containing it. I've explored the whole Mexico region, and I can name off the top of my head 7 different states that I know that there is and there are artifacts that are being discovered and surfaced all over the place. But there's also other people, like I said, I'm not going to mention no names, that I've heard on your program before, that they've been around here and sifting through this type of territory, sifting through the territory, investigating this same topic. And the only differences between, and they know that it's extremely dangerous to come in here and set something up in the way that me and Steve have had the privilege and the opportunity to be able. I'm a native from here, George, so I know how to move, and I know how to interact with people, and that has been my biggest advantage to bringing this type of evidence, where I know that there is other investigators, extremely popular gentlemen from TV, from History Channel, from Discovery Channel, so on, etc., that have been over here just slightly investigating the topic, because they can't get any deeper. The deeper you go in, and you put yourself at risk. Even another one of these gentlemen, certified archaeologist from the U.S., was in Jalisco, Ojuelos, and he was mingling with the people probably for about a couple of years, and this gentleman ended up taking him for ransom, and he kidnapped him and they emptied out his bank account. Thank God that nothing happened to him, but there's just like I said, I've explored probably about 89% of what we know is Mexico today, and these artifacts are surfacing throughout the whole region. And the reason why we have access, why I have access to them in the way that I do, is because it's uncontainable. When I was in the Yucatan region, which is connected to Central America, I went over there exploring, and they have it completely contained over there. Everything is gated, like the whole state is completely blocked off, and you can't get into any of the. And I don't illegally enter any zones, George. I'm not doing this legally. I show up to wherever location it is that I have set in mind, and I mingle with the people, and I get to know the people. I talk to the people, and I'm able to move and discern if there's danger, because it's they're my people. I know how my people think, and I know how they move, and I know what signs to look for when it's no longer safe and it's time for me to tuck tail and run.
How many artifacts, Jesse, did you give to this guy who was going to carbon date them for you and stole them? How many did he take from you?
I gave him, I think there was a total of, it's been years. There was a total, he's a very well-known guy too. I gave him probably about like 5, I think.
Is he a Mexican or United States citizen?
He's an American. He's an American, and even some of the people here. Check this out, George. Some of the people that I've worked with also have given artifacts to other investigators who have also been on your show, but I'm not going to say no names. And they have completely ran off with them.
Jeez.
They take off with them. So everybody knows that. Well, let me just say this, Steve, George, that as time continues to progress, more has to be revealed. The people will find out. And the reason why me and Steve do and have done what we are doing in the way that we have, our next documentary that's to be released anytime now, it's 2 different locations. It's 2 different archaeological sites here in Mexico, and we go step by step with the investigation.
Yeah.
Into the zones. When we enter the zones, we enter the locations. I'm talking to the people. I'm explaining what it is that we're doing, and to the point where we bring in the technology that's necessary in order for us to scan the ground, and bring the archaeological team and get them digging and start extracting artifacts out of the ground. George, it hasn't been easy thinking of it now in the way that it needs to be done. It hasn't been easy, but like I said, fortunately for us, we have been able to document on camera this type of information so that we can give it to the people and they can see for themselves.
What can you conclude at this point, Jesse, knowing what you know about artifacts, about 9,000-year-old ETs on this planet, that they may still be here? What can you conclude for us?
Well, what I can conclude for you guys is that if your public and your listeners, I would encourage them to study the images, not only on just the artifacts that I've investigated, but it's all over in every culture, all over the world, and the images, the activities that we see them doing on these images, which is at the end of the day, I'm just going to narrow it down. It's them messing with the human genome, manipulating our DNA. I believe that they're pushing towards that again, and these artifacts display this type of information. Every single artifact that I've researched and I've analyzed and studied and just meditated on its iconography and its hieroglyphs, its images that are embedded on them. None of them show anything that I can see that can benefit us as humans.
The artifacts that are based on the ETs, the alien grays, for example, Jesse, how big are they? Can you kind of describe for us what they look like?
Yes, some of them. You know what, George? Some of them are the size of sliding doors. They're panels.
That big?
Yes. Just recently, some of the guys that I was working with last year, they just found a cave, and the cave has I think it's a tomb. I really haven't paid much attention to it because the reason why is because if I start giving them this attention, they're going to continue to call me. They're going to continue to make contact with me. They're going to continue to want me to go over there. And unless the moment or the situation calls for me to continue to pick up my investigations, I'll go over there and document it. But they did send me some videos of a cave that they found, and I've seen statues. I've researched and analyzed statues that weigh at the most up to 3 tons. Measuring at I myself have not had the opportunity to excavate or extract an artifact that big from the ground, but because for the simple fact, George, is that it is pretty dangerous over there. And when I start,
sure.
once I spend time, in the midst of all of these people, and they know that I'm connected to Steve, and they know that Steve is a white man, and they know this and that, like, my life is in danger. And to me, the artifacts that I have discovered and extracted from the ground, the ones that are documented in our film, I'm happy with those because, in the beginning of every single one of these projects, we really don't know what's going to happen. We're just, we're setting things up, we're preparing things, and we know that this. And here's another thing, George, is that Steve didn't bring me on board with him just like that. I had to prove to him that what it is that we were doing was a legit thing.
Oh yeah, he's a tough investigator, Jesse, as you know.
He is. Yes. And I've had the privilege to be working with him for some years now, and he's taught me a lot. And he continues to teach me how to move, how to operate, how to respond to certain situations in a professional manner. But I myself would have never taken this upon. I would have taken this project on if I would have known that it wasn't real. And when it comes to discerning and distinguishing the real from the fake, there is a lot of fake out there, George. But that's why we do what we do. That's why we have documented this film step by step, so that the people can see for themselves that what we are bringing to them is a legitimate thing. And this legitimate thing that we're presenting is not a simple thing. It's not a small thing. It's a serious message that these artifacts convey. It's a sign, not only for the townfolk, but to the people all across the world. And like I said, there is a lot of counterfeiters out there, for the simple fact that this type of information that these artifacts bring is information that's extremely valuable. I see the information more valuable than the artifacts themselves, because these artifacts are speaking, and they're speaking a message. And not only is it a message, but it's a warning along with the message, which what once was and what will be again, in my opinion, based upon what it is that we're seeing move through the skies. I mean, the sightings are continuing to increase by the day.
What is your take, Jesse, on the recent U.S. congressional hearing on UAPs, as they call them? What do you think of that?
Okay, well, when it comes to dealing with those, not trying to be hard or disrespectful, George, but when was the last time anybody from within the legislative branch or any legislative branch of the government, when was the last time they have spoken the truth to us? When was the last time they have given us any information that was of any value? When was the last time that they have pushed to do something to improve our way of life instead of what they're doing now and what they have been doing throughout bring us to this point to where they want to oppress us. They are working in conjunction with these entities. These entities are not independent to what we're seeing happen all over the world, George. This is all connected. And I'll give you an example. Earlier, you asked me what it is that you asked me. What is the purpose of these artifacts? And the purpose to these artifacts is the nature of their movement and how they're operating right now. And what is the nature of their modus operandi, you might ask? Well, let me just tell you, George, that the nature of these entities that we're dealing with is extremely demonic, and it's connected to the occult. And when you study the occult, I've studied the occult. I'm not from the occult, but I have gone into their little sites to do study and research, and I've gone on witches' pages to study their recipes and their programs. If you notice, I wouldn't. You know what? This is one thing that I wouldn't encourage anybody to look into these witches' pages, George, because something can stick to them and something can follow them out, and it'll be a big mess for the people. But I will say that when I have gone in there, I do recognize on the witches, the sorcerers, the warlocks, their pages, I recognize some of the same symbols that are on some of the artifacts. I will say that that I have connected probably about 35 to 40% of some of the symbols that I've seen on the artifacts, on witches' covens, pages, and so on, etc. And I believe that this extends all the way into those who govern over us, who rule and reign over us, and who are leading the population to our demise and our destruction. And I believe that these entities cannot operate outside of their assistance, because I also believe that this earth was created for us as humans. I believe that this earth was created for us, for us to inhabit, to rule, to reign, to subdue the land, and to be prosperous.
Jesse, is it conceivable, is it possible that these entities may be the fallen angels that the Bible talks about?
You know, George, in my estimation, I believe exactly that this is who they are. I believe exactly that this is who we're dealing with. I believe that these are the fallen angels that are spoken of in the Bible that have continuously repackaged their identity to create confusion and to lead people in every which direction than what or where the Bible would lead us towards. And that direction is towards, a loving, merciful God who sits on the throne in heaven. I believe that just as you have mentioned, I believe that these are the entities that are made reference throughout, not just in the Genesis 6, not just in the chapter or in the book of Genesis chapter 6, but there is a myriad and a plethora of examples where these entities are made reference to. And that's where I get my main conclusions as to when you asked earlier, what do you believe these entities, what do you believe that these artifacts were made for? Because if you really look at it, they're everywhere, not just here in Mexico, they're all over the world. And the purpose of an artifact or a stone temple or an altar in the Bible, whether we're talking about we're talking about the people who wholeheartedly followed the God of the Bible, or the people who wholeheartedly followed the fallen angels in the former, in reference of Baal, Molech, or any other type of deity. Whenever there was a stone type like a structure erected by either follower, whether it was the good or the bad, these types of stone structures were called like, for example, every time Jacob or any of the fathers of the faith, Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, had an encounter with God, they would erect a pillar of stones, because that was the place and the location that the natural made contact with the supernatural. And I believe that that's what these artifacts are for. I believe that these entities established them from the very beginning to cover the entirety of what we know, this planet, so that they can have reference points of contact. Now, this terminology that I use, a reference point of contact, is also connected to how occult practices, witches, sorcerers, and warlocks move. So, yes, I believe, to answer your question, George, I believe that these are the fallen angels that are made reference in the Bible, and just how the Bible warns anybody who reads it with an open mind and an open heart. It does warn us in many instances that they will return, that they will be back. And I believe that one of the reasons why, like for example, George, I know that you know this and your listeners know this, and I'm going to mention this so that we can connect the dots. These fallen angels have recreated their identity in different ways, different forms, whether we're talking about the Aztec, the Toltec, the Mayan, the Greek pantheon, whether we're talking about the Titans, so on, etc. Now, when I think about what they want to do here, George, in my estimation, what I believe, the reason why I believe that they're doing this is because, just like the Bible says, that these entities will come back. The Bible says that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. And you see, we don't know what that's going to look like.
Well, it did. It didn't work the first time for these fallen angels, so this is their second attempt. Do you think they think it's going to work this time?
No, it's not going to work. But it's not going to work because it's already written. It's already written in the scriptures how it's going to end. You know, but there is a lot of people who there is a lot of people who will, you know, fall victim to this type of evil, dark, wicked, nefarious schemes. And at this point, George, I can tell you myself that I've had encounters with these entities after the fact that I've had these artifacts in my possession, and the only thing that I can say based upon my experiences or my experience, I have experienced it a couple of times, but the first time I experienced it was the more intense time than any of the other times. And I will say that when one of these entities stands in our presence, our body completely shuts down, our nervous system completely shuts down. We're not capable of handling the type of power that they carry within our own strength, and we need supernatural assistance from God to protect us and to keep us from what these entities are preparing. Not only what they are doing now, because it's happening all over the place. I mean, it's evident. Nothing gets better. Everything is continuing to increase. I believe also myself that what happened in Maui was a sacrificial offering to these entities, because the more that strife, the more that there's discord, the more that there's hatred being released from the hearts and the minds of the people, the more that this confusion continues to expand, is the more ground that these entities are able to operate. And I do believe wholeheartedly, George, that I know this for a fact, that the only way that we will be able to stand against this type of evil is if we cover ourselves in the blood of Jesus Christ.
Where is the entity called Lucifer, Jesse?
Lucifer is roaming the earth. According to the Bible, according to what the Bible reveals to us, Lucifer roams to and fro throughout the earth, seeking for people, seeking for souls whom he may devour. And I believe that I believe wholeheartedly that these entities are in assistance to him. There's been a lot of people who say, how can Lucifer and his minions and his fallen angels be structured, and how can they be organized? They're the representation and the epitome of evil and hate, and evil and hate cannot stand in unity. Well, evil and hate have a common goal and a common cause, which they all know that at the end they will reach their destruction, and they're doing everything in their power, and that means them uniting so that they can try to carry out the impossible, which they will not do. They're more deceived than anybody or anything else walking on the face of the earth, thinking that they could stand against the one true God who sits on the throne in heaven.
Let's take some calls for you. Daniel in Panama City, Florida, to get us started. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi there, George. Thank you so much. Remembering from the old AM 1430 days, I love how you've marketed yourself.
Oh, yes.
And Jesse, I really like this content and the subject matter. The comment about Maui, the town is close together. I lived there for 15 years, and they are maybe consumed with a little bit of licentiousness and clinging to physical possessions. But it's just tragic. Natural disaster could have happened, but I'd like to evoke the power of the God that whose peace surpasses all understanding, and remind people to check in with Romans 12 in the Bible and help get centered so we don't succumb to these evil forces. And they are out there. But I like these items that you found. You lost 5 of them, you said. And I wondered if you'd be able to explain in the most detail possible any imagery or graphics, like bodily positions or anything that looks like a chimeric being, like, say, the Egyptians had the wolf head-looking beings. And if you think these people, or these descriptions, the people that made them, are with the evil forces that would like to procrastinate things on Earth and perpetuate it so they can spend more time here where prophecy needs to be fulfilled, are they on the good or evil? And describe them in as much detail as possible. Thank you, George, and thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you, Daniel.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. That's a good question, and I will say that anything or anyone who has been associated with the construction and the developing of these types of artifacts is not good. Nothing that these artifacts bring is meant or marked for good, and there is a symbol on there. There's many symbols that are throughout these artifacts. But if I was to focus on one, I would focus on this seemingly quiet but yet ominous and inconspicuous symbol that tends to subtly make its mark, and it leaves a huge impression. Not only can the symbol be seen on the majority of the artifacts that I have discovered throughout my expeditions in Mexico, but the same symbol, I've also traced it and tracked it engraved on ancient artifacts and around megalithic structures and temples throughout the whole world, including some that date back to the first and second Chinese dynasties, to the Genghis Khan era, and even extending itself to the most popular and the widely recognized hieroglyphs that the whole world is familiar and aware of in Egyptian iconography, like the Ben stone, and all across the Middle East to the Phoenician religious temples of Baal Tanit and Asherah worship in Sidona. And this symbol is like I said, it's an extremely quiet symbol that's on these artifacts. Like, the reason why I just mentioned the Egyptian Ben stone is because I want to give the people a picture and an understanding that I'm not just trying to promote my work, and I'm just heavily just trying to push the work that we're doing. So I believe that it's extremely important for me to use outside examples to back up the evidence that I have presented to the people right now at this moment. And if you take a look at the Egyptian Ben stone, the symbol that I make reference to is on one of the sides of this particular ancient stone that's in the Egyptian museum is a simple dot within a circle that I call the orb within the orb. And if we all know that the majority of the sightings that we are witnessing and testifying to all around the world is of an orb, and if you take a look at the Ben stone on top of this quiet, inconspicuous dot-like circle, expands some angel wings over this orb, indicating that the essence and the true nature of an orb is that of an angel. And like I was saying earlier, that it's necessary for these entities to scatter not only the artifacts but the symbols, just like your listener made mention of right now, George, in the aspect that these entities operate through frequency and structure. And this, not only are the artifacts a point of contact, but this symbol is a point of frequency to their manifestations. And this symbol, like as I said, this symbol, I have tracked it into every ancient culture worldwide. There hasn't been one place that I have not ran across this symbol. And even closer to home, in the Four Corners region of the United States, well, closer to you guys, because I'm here in Mexico, George, but closer to you guys in the U.S., it would have been by a prehistoric and extinct indigenous people who were known as the Anasazi. They even used this symbol as the shape of their temples and altars, what they called kiva. The kivas were perfect, massive circles that were built into the earth for the purpose of what I just mentioned, magic rituals and ceremonial religious practices that were used extensively by the Anasazi to illegally access the spirit realm, and extending itself from the ancient with it. This symbol, and I'm going to connect the symbol into what's happening right now in our present day and time. What I just made reference to right now is how this symbol began and how it was passed to every single ancient culture in our past. But on a more modern and recent historical context, this symbol throughout history has continued to evolve and was popularized, I believe, in 1714 by a Gottfried Wilhelm as the study of the study of the first principle to metaphysics. This symbol was used to describe. It was used by. It has been associated and it has been associated and affiliated and known to be used by Gnosticism, who embrace the symbol as their supreme being. It's the same symbol that these entities move before they shift into a UFO craft. It's the same symbol that they use to move on a molecular level, because when we see these entities moving and shifting to the sky, like I said, George, I've had encounters with these entities, and I always go back to my first encounter, which was the most intense one that has made an impact in my mind. And I always draw information and conclusions from this encounter. And one of the questions that I ask myself, now you guys have to remember that I'm making reference to this particular symbol.
How many people, Jesse, are in that camp that believe that these extraterrestrials might be fallen angels? What do you think?
Well, I believe that there's a very small percentage, because even within the confines of the church, I'm telling you, the reason I make reference to this and lean extremely towards this direction, George, is because I've had encounters with them, and I've actually it came to a point where there was 5 of them who came in through the ceiling of my roof and attempted to take me. And at that time, I wasn't living for God. And at that moment, they grabbed me by the ankles and they were dragging me. And I cried out to God and I said, please don't let them take me. And if you don't let them take me, I promise that I will serve you. I had no clue that incident, that event would lead me to where I'm at right here, doing documentaries with Steve Quell, and even here making this presentation and doing this interview with you, George. But to answer your question, even within it's becoming more popular now that that the topic continues to grow intensively, and people are embracing it. But in my estimation, I believe that there's a very small remnant of people who truly do believe that this is the situation that's happening, and that these entities that we're dealing with, these entities that have piqued the interest and have captivated the hearts and minds of millions, and by metamorphosizing and resurfacing as in the days of old, and cleverly merging themselves like subatomic particles into the very nucleus of our culture, making themselves the center of our everyday life through the witchcrafts and the operations that they run, and the frequencies, that these are the fallen angels. And there will come a time where only by evoking and calling out on the name of Jesus will we be able to be protected from any of this. I would encourage people to seek out God, honestly, because it doesn't take. We don't have to take we don't have to look far to see and to truly understand that things are extremely, getting out of control from every area, every direction. And I do believe that we are getting to the point where they will be walking amongst us. I live off of the coast of Baja here, and I see them come out of the water nightly, continuously. They have this predilection towards the water, and I've always asked myself, what is it that is in the water that these entities gravitate towards, that they must be using to push forward their agenda and their plans. And I've started researching the essence of what it doesn't take a physicist to figure this out, George, but when we take a look at everything that's created around us, at one point or another, everything that is alive through water or oxygen, and water is made through the water molecule is made through the atom, which is 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. But it's the hydrogen atom that's more that I believe is more utilized. Even making reference to this recipe with how the scientists identify this is they even themselves identify the hydrogen atom as a portal from where nothingness becomes and manifests into something. And like I've mentioned earlier, in order for these entities to operate within our proximity, in order for them to enter from the quantum realm, which is the invisible realm that even the scientists don't understand, and enter into our 4-dimensional realm, which is space and time, they need to utilize the elements in order for them to move within this realm. And I believe that they're utilizing the hydrogen atom in order for them to materialize in some type of way. Now, if we take a look at how the Bible has made reference to this and the way that it describes them, these entities are capable, not even only through the Bible, but through the Greek, the Roman, the Aztec pantheon. These entities are able. It has been known that they're able to walk in a corporeal way, meaning as human beings, or even theriomorphic beings that are written on the walls and on the temples of megalithic.
Well, they could be walking among. They could be walking among us. Let's go to final calls. First time caller Lisa in Chicago. Hi, Lisa. Go ahead.
Hi. You mentioned two sites, Chupicuaro and Tulum. The artifacts that you keep referring to, which site are they from?
Okay, I have the artifacts are from two different places. There's in Tulum, we couldn't get in right there. We had no access. I had no access in that area, but it's in Tula, which is Allende, and also in Chupicuaro, Guanajuato, which is connected to Acámbaro, Guanajuato. But further down, extending probably about a couple hundred miles, give or take, a few miles, it's in Lago de Cuitzeo. So the artifacts that I'm presenting to the people as evidence come from Lago de Cuitzeo and Tula, Allende.
Let's go to Jose in Louisiana. Wildcard line. Hi, Jose. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. How are you doing? I've been a Christian for about 11 years now, and I've had some, just odd experiences with, the things you guys are talking about, and I really don't know who to talk to without coming off as crazy. And I truly do believe, these aliens are demons, but how would I go about, sharing my story to other believers about things that I've experienced?
What do you recommend, Jesse, for somebody who believes what you do and wants to talk to people about it?
I would recommend that you don't talk to people about it for the simple fact that first and foremost, I would suggest that you seek out God and that you read the Bible every day. There's a plethora of examples in the Bible of how it is that we can deal with these entities, and some are evident and some are not so evident. But the more that I've learned by sitting in God's presence is the more that I have developed and been able to deal with these types of attacks. You can't even the church is not ready for this. They don't accept this because the church allows the culture to dictate what it is and how they perceive the reality in which we live in. So my advice to you would be that and don't try to strike a conversation with anybody about this unless they would ask you about it. Like when I know a lot, but in my mind I feel like I don't know enough, and I also feel that I need to learn more so that I could be able to help people in times of need, and those times are coming. But my advice to you, as I said once again, is just to seek the presence of God and don't try to connect with people or anybody. If you're looking for somewhere to vent to the Lord, read your Bible. That's the only place that you're going to gain power. I myself for years kept this, to myself because who can you really actually talk to about? And the only reason I'm able to, talk about it now is because it's blowing up at the seams. But yeah, just take it to God and believe that He will bring you to a place where He will show you with whatever it is that He reveals to you what to do with this information.
East of the Rockies, Katie's with us in Pennsylvania. Hi, Katie.
Hi. I have a question.
All right.
Once these guys used to be up in heaven and they were happy, right? Well, they've had a long time to get angry for the simple fact that they didn't get what they expected. What if we took these bad guys to places like Hershey Park or Disney and showed them happy again? Do you think they could make a difference?
No.
And the question basically was, Jesse, how do you make these fallen angels happy again?
There's no redemption for these entities. There's an extra biblical text that's called the Book of Job, and this book, or the first book of Job, not the second or the third, but this book it gives us information that collaborates with the Genesis chapter 6 narrative and many other things, and this book reveals to us that these angels, the book of Enoch. I'm sorry, the first book of Enoch, not the second or the third, but that these angels came to this individual man of God, Enoch, and they asked him to intercede to God for them for forgiveness. And Enoch went into the presence of God and related the message on behalf of these angels. And God's response to Enoch was, there is no redemption for them. And the reason why I believe that they have no redemption and they are destined to eternal damnation and judgment on the day of the Lord is because they have known God in a way that no human here on earth has known God. And they know the mysteries and the secrets to the universe. And because they were created and had stood in the presence of God and still decided to move forward with their plan and their agenda to rebel against God, thereby they have no redemption. And this is a call that is written and known, made by God himself and our Lord Jesus Christ.
Let's go to Joe in Monterey, California. Hey, Joseph, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, George.
Sure thing, Joe.
Jesse, you have a lot of coverage, and you have learned so much, and God bless you. You have angels to protect you.
Thank you.
The war has already begun. This Armageddon has begun, and this war against extraterrestrial has also begun. Those artifacts has a certain type of energy. Can a person really leave a country with national treasure? Because artifacts are considered national treasure. I don't think they were stolen. I think they were confiscated. I think they're going to be used for various reasons.
Yeah, they were confiscated. This individual, this individual who I handed him off to, he's a very well-known, very popular in the U.S. and he does fall in and take orders from the draconian reptilian overrulers who are pushing forward, their agendas, and the reason why they're not at this point where we're at right now, why they're not recognized is why they're not being acknowledged, which I believe they soon will be, is simply because it changes everything that they have said to us in regards to our history. And not only that, but people will begin to learn for themselves and investigate, and the more that people search for the truth, the truth needs to be sought out. And when you search for the truth, you will find the truth, and that truth is found within the pages of the Bible, and that's why these artifacts are not being acknowledged, because the last thing they want is for anybody to find freedom and deliverance through the words and the promises and the power that comes with this book, which is the Holy Bible.
Jesse, what's the name of the documentary that you and Steve are working on?
The name of the documentary that will be released soon is Gen 6 Expeditions in Mexico. And this documentary consists of many years of methodical research and preparation, but also two different archaeological dig sites. Like I said, there's more than 2 dig sites here in Mexico, George. But when me and Steve were making preparations to do something new, I thought that we were going to hit another dig site, another archaeological site in Mexico, apart from the ones that we have already documented. But we believe that it would be, since we've had and been blessed with the ability to succeed in pushing these projects forward, Steve decided that we should try our well-being and the goodness of the grace that God is showing us in other places around the world.
Well, you keep up doing the good work, my friend. Jesse Alberto works with our friend Steve Quayle. L.A. Marzulli back with us, author, lecturer, filmmaker. He has penned many books, including the Nephilim trilogy, and received an honorary doctorate for the series from the Pacific International University. L.A. has lectured on the subjects of UFOs, the Nephilim, ancient prophetic texts, presenting his exhaustive research at conferences, churches, as well as appearances and interviews on media outlets worldwide. He's a regular contributor here at Coast to Coast. His latest film is called Out of Place Artifacts. L.A., welcome back, and pumped out another one on the trail of the Nephilim series. This one is called Out of Place Artifacts. What's going on here?
Well, it's amazing because I've traveled not all over the world, but I've traveled to a lot of places. And every now and then you see something, I see something, and I kind of go, this is out of place. This doesn't belong here. From Peru to the Vatican to over in Israel to Spain to Portugal. I mean, we didn't do everything, but we got enough of them to create, I think, which is a great film. It's over an hour. I want to thank Josh Peck because Josh did the final edit on it and brought it over the line. That film's been kind of sitting on my desk for a little over 2 years because my focus has been, as you know, on the whole UFO phenomenon. And we have 6 films out on that. 7, 8, and 9 are all in post-production. So we're really cranking out the work. But I really wanted to get this film out because it was like half done. And I still do. I think it's an important film because it shows that something else is going on here. Something which it's not jiving with the official record, as it were.
How many different artifacts are we talking about?
Well, I mean, you've got everything from the Vatican obelisk, and I'll never forget when we were over in Italy and we were touring there. We were actually filming at different megalithic sites all over the country. Some of it we've used, a lot of it we've never used. It's still sitting in the archives because it takes a long time to actually get a film out. So I'm in Vatican Square. I'll never forget it. And I'm walking around this obelisk thing, and I'm kind of going to myself, what's wrong with this picture? I mean, what am I looking at here? And so I got back to our room, and I Googled it, and sure enough, this thing comes from Heliopolis in Egypt. And actually, Caesar Augustus brought it over in 35 BC. But this obelisk is made out of red granite, and it was probably at least another 1,500 years before that where this thing was constructed. There's no hieroglyphics on it. No one knows who created it. It just winds up in Heliopolis. A special barge is created to move this thing back into Rome, and then Caesar Augustus erects this thing. Later on, Caligula uses it. I mean, but I'm looking at this thing thinking to myself, oh my gosh, it's like, I think 300 tons. It's 84 feet high. And here's the kicker. And we demonstrate this in the film. This is red granite. This is really hard stuff. We actually interviewed Jim Vieira, who I know has been on Coast before too.
Yeah.
And Jim weighs in on this thing, and he's looking at the obelisk like I am, and he's going, wait a minute, where does this thing come from? Who created this obelisk? Because you go back, let's just go 2,000 years. Now you're in the Iron Age, and okay, iron's a different deal. But you go back into the Bronze Age, or even before that, where this thing was allegedly made, and it begs the question, how the heck did they do it? George, for every centimeter or inch or 1/16 of an inch that this thing rises, the diameter, circumference of this thing is changing. It's changing all the time. So people will say, well, you can take a chalk line and go to the quarry and snap it and, ching, 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 ching. Yeah, but this is granite. And we demonstrate in the film, and it's just one of my favorite parts in the film, that you can't really dent granite with a copper chisel. We have a brand new copper chisel, and we've got a small block of granite. And we show it in the film, and we're going bam, 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 and the guy is hitting the copper chisel, and after like 7 or 8 hits, he shows which it went before we started hitting the chisel on the granite block, a nice sharp edge, completely blunted. So it's very enigmatic. It's kind of like the Great Pyramid. It's the same type of thing. Where does all this come from? And if you go into YouTube and they've got people with copper saws and sand and mortar, and I get that, and I'll grant that you can cut blocks of granite with a copper saw and mortar and sand, because the sand is harder than the granite and the copper, and so you get 2 men on either side and you can cut a block. I understand that. But just show me how you cut the obelisk. And the sides are polished. And then how do you move it? When it was moved, I think it was 1586, one pope decided to move it. The guy's name was Pope Sixtus V. So he decides to move this obelisk. And they've got etchings of it, which are just mind-boggling when you look at what it took to move this thing, just a few hundred yards. I mean, that's all they did. It's like 900 men and 300 horses. And when I say that, they were all positioned around the obelisk with ropes and pulleys and levers and blocks of wood. I mean, the production is unbelievable to move this thing.
I was going to say, how did they even loosen it, L.A., to get it to move?
Well, exactly. It's unbelievable. And so there's a few of these things around on the planet. I look at that, and in the film I say, in my opinion, this is Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology is what we're looking at. Because the technology that created that, in my opinion, is no longer on the planet. Archaeologists will look at my statement and scoff and laugh. But then you go to another place, and we sat down with an archaeologist there, and I'm talking about, of course, Sacsayhuaman in Peru. I've been there several times, like 2 or 3 different times, and I've actually led a tour there with Tim Alberino, which was incredible. And when I lead a tour down there, and we're at Sacsayhuaman, and these megalithic stones are polygonal in shape. They're 60, 100 tons, 40 tons, 70 tons. It's all over the map. Polygonal shape. And, I'm not, obviously, other people have looked at this. Eric Van Daniken. I remember reading his book as a kid, as a teenager, and going, my gosh, I've got to go there. And then winding up there at some point, much later in life. But, people like Brian Forrester has put that on the map. A lot of us have looked at it, talked about it. I know Ancient Aliens did a whole thing at Sacsayhuaman. But the bottom line is this. If you cannot cut andesite stone with a copper chisel, then you can't do it. We demonstrate this, of course, in the film. And moreover, how do you move 60 tons of stone? So it's nothing new, but is it an out-of-place artifact? You bet your boots it is. And there's, of course, others in the film. We left some of them out because it's probably later on down the road we'll do it part 2 or something.
Part 2, like sure. Explain to us, kind of paint us a picture of the obelisk itself in terms of what it looks like.
84 feet tall, 300 tons, red. It's pink granite. It's highly polished. Pope Sixtus V, why did he do this? After they moved it, he performed a rite of exorcism on it. And that begs the question, what did he know that we're not being told? Why would the Pope perform a rite of exorcism on the obelisk? Why would he do such a thing? I mean, granted, Caesar Augustus brings it over, Caligula erects it, and what was the Circus Circus. But when Pope, by the time, this is 1586, and it's 900 men and 300 horses, depending on what account you actually read. It's either 3 months or 6 months or 9 months to move the obelisk. It's just a few hundred yards, if that, from one area to the other. And, of course, it's an unbelievable undertaking, as we talked about. But the Pope performs this rite of exorcism, and that is now carved into the base of the obelisk. And what's amazing, out-of-place artifacts hidden in plain sight, millions of people go by this thing every single year. I mean, millions of people see it, go by it. And how many people are just inquisitive enough to go in and start, well, where did this thing really come? Like I was, because I looked at it and said, something's wrong with this picture.
L.A., where do people get a chance to watch this?
It's up on our streaming site. That's streaming at lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Or if you want to get the DVD, it's just lamarzulli.net. But the streaming way is a great way to go because it's instant gratification. And you can check that out, streaming.lamarzulli.net.
Great. You went back to Peru. What did you find there?
Well, there's a lot of different sites in Peru. And it's just absolutely, if you've never been there, if you've never looked down at Sacsayhuaman from the little plateau, and you look across the plaza, and there's Sacsayhuaman, or you go to Ollantaytambo, and you look at the stones, the megalithic stones and the way they're constructed. Modern-day archaeologists insist that the Inca built these. But those of us with eyes to see look at this and go, you're smoking something and you're dishing out a lot of hooey, because the Inca, you can see the difference between the Inca slop, which is really a nice wall, but in comparison to what is actually there, the ancient megalithic structures are done in such a pristine, workmanlike way that to do it today on any of these sites, could you do it? Possibly. But you're looking at some of these stones, the 80, 100 tons. How do you move them? And, you go back a couple of thousand years before the horse was there. You've got llamas. I'm not buying that for a second. And the quarry is, according to Brian Forrester, about 40 miles away and at a lower elevation. And apparently, I've never been to the quarry, but Brian has. And he said a lot of these stones were quarried high up on the cliff. So how was that done? Moreover, when you go to places like Ollantaytambo, some of the stones which have been thrown down by some sort of a cataclysmic event they're odd shaped. They're just not stones like a pillar or just a square or a rectangle. They have extremely weird shapes in them. There's something is cut into them. They've been shaped very deliberately to do something. Those of us who've looked at it basically posit that what we may be looking at is some sort of ancient machine that was destroyed thousands and thousands of years ago. So I sat there with an archaeologist. He's actually an archaeoastronomer. And this gentleman, Andre Agassi, believes, as I do, that we're looking at technology which is no longer on the planet. It's not here. I mean, you can't duplicate this today. And so we're sitting in front of this area which has been cut out. And it looks like some machine was thrust into the rock. It's all polished. The corners are pristine. There are no chisel marks or grinding marks, anything like that. It's completely void of anything. And so you start putting these things together, and I've been on some of these sites like Machu Picchu, and the docents will sit there and tell us that the Inca were master stone builders, and you just want to scream, because you guys are just parroting what you were told to say. Obviously, there are two different builders here. The Inca came in and repurposed the stone, just like we see in Egypt, where the later Egyptians come in and repurpose these very, very ancient megalithic sites. But we see this all around the globe. Other people come in and they repurpose the site. We see it here in the Americas in places like the Octagon Mountain, the Circle Mountain. We film extensively there, and that'll probably be released early next year, that film. And what we discovered, I'm kind of hopping around here, but what we discovered, you want to talk about out-of-place artifacts, is just mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling, and we'll talk about that at a later date. But certainly Peru is high on the list of out-of-place artifacts, where you actually come into a site like Machu Picchu and you look at it and you kind of go, oh my gosh, why? And who did this? And why was it abandoned? George, there's something I've been drilling into on all my travels all over. All these sites have something in common in that they are abandoned, and abandoned very abruptly. And I'm not going to tell you what my hypothesis is. That's in a later film and something I'm still working on, still researching, talking to archaeologists, anthropologists, different disciplines to try to get my hand on the pulse here of what we might be looking at. But it's high strangeness, to coin a term from the late Dr. J. Allen Hynek. I mean, it is high strangeness all day long. We're looking at something that's like, wow, seriously? But we'll see, because wherever I go, and I mentioned, Machu Picchu, and when you arrive there, that site was lost. No one knew it was there. I mean, the natives around the area knew it was there. But even today, just to get to the top of it, it's actually extremely harrowing. You think they put like a ski lift in or something. But you get on the bus and it's very circuitous, and you do all these switchbacks and you wind your way up the mountain, and finally there you are. And I'll never forget just coming into the gateway, and there's this ancient megalithic site. and the stones are huge, absolutely huge. And of course, that begs the question: how were they moved? How were they cut? Moreover, who did it? Out of place artifacts, absolutely, all day long.
L.A., you talk a lot about the fallen angel technology. Is that the same as ET technology?
I would say no. We have to define our terms. You know, ET is extraterrestrial. So by definition, anything that doesn't originate or is born or comes from planet Earth is an extraterrestrial. I prefer interdimensional entity, and I believe that these entities came here, set up shop. They did it over and over and over again. They were destroyed in the Great Flood, and every culture on the planet has a flood story of some sort, so we know that it happened. I mean, I'm not making this up. It's a question of, you know, why were these sites abandoned, circling back to what I was just saying. Why are these sites abandoned? Why are they there in the first place? And how was it that we would have trouble duplicating some of the, certainly Sacsayhuaman is a perfect example of that. We would have trouble duplicating that today. But you go to some of these other places. We were set to actually go to Israel, George, right before the war. Peggy and I were at the Prophecy Watchers Conference, and we were headed to Atlanta that day, Saturday. We were headed to Atlanta, and from there, on Sunday, we would have been in Israel when war broke out. So our tour, which we call the Nephilim tour, would have taken us into northern Israel, where a lot of these sites are. One of the sites that we love to take people to, of course, is Gilgal Raphaim, and that's called the Wheel of the Giants, the Circle of the Giants. It's 42,000 tons of basalt rock in 5 concentric rings with a tomb, which I've crawled into, by the way, in the center of the site.
And all these artifacts, L.A., are huge, all of them.
Many of them are. But then you get other artifacts like we call it the Nephilim lens. And that, I'd love to talk about that if you want to go there. But the Nephilim lens is just, and you want to talk conspiracy stuff, we got into some really weird stuff when we were testing that lance.
That was found by a Michigan hiker, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's out. Bob Shelley is hiking around, and he comes into this abandoned campsite, and the lance is there, and it weighs 28 pounds. And he's thinking to himself, do I really want to hike out with this thing? 28 pounds, it's not some light little object. And he's already got a full pack because he's out there camping. But he takes the thing, he brings it to us. We're there. Chief Joseph Riverwind takes one look at it and goes, it's not a sword, it's a lance. And then Chief Joseph tells us, this is mind-boggling, what's in the Native American oral tradition, that the red-haired, six-fingered giants, the Nephilim giants, would raid and come into a village of Native American First Nation people, and with these lances, which are about 3 feet long, and they would run through 3 braves.
Oh, jeez.
As they're
at one time.
At one time, and they lift them over their head, screaming and yelling, popping their heads off, drinking the blood like a Coke can. I mean, they were unbelievable. And this all from Chief Joseph. I'm not elaborating in any way. He comes on the record and talks about this. So Bob Shelley allows us to test the metal, and we take a very small sample. We bring it to a highly renowned metal testing lab in an unknown location. I'm not going to give away or embarrass the lab. And we're met with the technician who assures us that the lab will be able to ascertain roughly when the thing was made, what the composition is, all the particulars that we're looking for. Well, 6 weeks go by. We were supposed to have the answers in 2 weeks. And I'm calling. It's like, where's the results? So I fly back into this place. It's near Detroit. I fly back in and I meet Bob Shelley there, and we're there now. But all of a sudden, the technician has a PR person next to her. She won't talk to us directly. Everything has to be censored with the PR person, and she is absolutely just. I mean, this is the managed agenda.
And she's got the whole lance. She's got the whole thing.
She's just got a very small piece of it.
Okay.
There's one of the things I refused to do and told Bob Shelley this. We're just going to take a piece of a lance. No way we're going to let this thing out of our sight. No way.
What piece did you take? The handle, the tip, or what?
We just took from the haft where it would actually tie into into a shaft of wood. The thing weighs 28 pounds. I mean, it's really heavy.
Yeah.
So this guy, Christian Winder, who comes in on the film, and he had a lab, and he heard my lamentation regarding the fact that we weren't really getting a straight shot with the testing. So he tested this thing, and they found isotopic ratios which point back to a Middle Eastern connection, specifically Saudi Arabia, which, of course, that whole area, we call it Nephilim Central. That's where they roam. So it's not conclusive. It could have come from Michigan, but also it could have been, because it's a bronze artifact, the tin definitely comes from Great Britain, no doubt about that. But it looks like it was originated in Saudi Arabia. So the question is, what the heck is that doing in Michigan? And the problem is here, with a lot of these artifacts, there's no provenance to them. In other words, I can't take you to the place where Bob Shelley found it, because someone else found, or maybe it washed up, maybe someone was digging. We don't know the provenance. We only know that Shelley found it at an abandoned campsite. So somebody was digging around in Michigan. And it's really interesting, of course, because Michigan is where those huge copper mines were, and a lot of copper, tons and tons of copper, has gone missing from those mines. Those mines were working and open thousands of years ago, and that created the Bronze Age that we see in Europe. Native Americans worked a little bit in copper, but they didn't make bronze. They didn't do that. They weren't smelting it down and creating bronze artifacts. So this is absolutely an out-of-place artifact, which is very enigmatic. And that's what the whole film is. That shows us that there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why we're creating these films.
It is, how do you find these places?
That's a really good question. You know, I get emails from people all the time, and we go down some wild goose chases, absolutely. But then we go into places, and all of a sudden we're sitting there with our jaws on the ground going, you've got to be kidding. One such place was Zambujero in Portugal, which really isn't in the film, although I do allude to it and show some pictures of it in the film. But Zambujero is, or was this, it was a tell. It was completely covered with dirt. And that begs the question, why was this done? Just like Göbekli Tepe, why did they bury it? Why is the site closed down and then buried? Why is Zambujero thousands of miles away in Portugal?
And who buries it?
Well, that's my point. That's what I'm working on, and I can't really go there, but that's what I'm working on, because something is going on here, and it's global, George. It's not just in one area; it's global. And it happens at different time periods. When you look at Gilgal Raphaim, the same thing. When you look at Göbekli Tepe, the site's covered. When you go to Zambujero in Portugal, huge megalithic stones. They're over 20 feet tall. There's a tumulus there. And the whole thing was covered up with dirt. When you go to America Stonehenge, the site is closed down. The site was closed down originally. What we know now is the sacrificial table. They didn't even know what it was. They just thought it was bedrock. There were vines growing on it. They didn't know what it was. And so the archaeologists went in and they started uncovering this thing, and then they realized, oh my gosh, what's this? But we hear about this over and over and over again, and it's global. So something is going on which we're not privy to, which we don't understand yet, and that's why I really can't spill the beans, because I'm not sure what I'm looking at either.
Are these artifacts, L.A., all created about the same time period?
No, they're all different time periods.
All different.
For instance, the Nephilim Lance is much closer to our timeline than what we see down in Peru. There's this very enigmatic bust which was found in an abandoned, in a mine shaft. And when we filmed it, something happened, George, which was we show it in the film, which was incredible, because as I'm filming this thing, we're in a museum, and I've got lights on it, and the camera is set up, and we're seeing detail in this bust which we've never seen before. The owner of the bust had never seen it before either. he was blown away. We were blown away. So I went with this a couple of weeks ago, and someone said, "L.A., are you aware that this bus, which shouldn't be there in the Americas, but it's there. It's definitely a Caucasian man, and it actually looks, and now that it's been pointed out to me, it's very reminiscent of the face on the Shroud of Turin."
Really? Like Jesus?
Yeah. I'm actually going down that rabbit hole and sending pictures of the bust to some sinologists and trying to get their take on it. What are we looking at here? This thing was found tens of feet below the surface of the earth. I mean, it was just hidden away in some underground chamber someplace. And until we really photographed it and had it, something happened with the mirrorless camera. It brought out definition that you don't see with the naked eye.
L.A., would you say most of the artifacts that you've been talking about have been hidden?
Well, some of them are absolutely in plain sight. I mean, obviously the Vatican obelisk is sitting in.
That's right there, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what amazes me is some of it is just millions of people go by it every single year and have no idea really what they're looking at, and they don't know the history of this thing, as we talked about in the first hour. The Nephilim lance, according to Chief Joseph, this is what these 9, 10, 12-foot giants, this is what they used, the red-haired giants that we hear from Sarah Winnemucca. The thing weighs 28 pounds, and, again, our research with the Nephilim lance, we discovered that Ishbi Benob, who was one of the giants mentioned in the biblical prophetic text, his spearhead, when you calculate the shekels and you move it into pounds, it's basically 28 pounds.
My God.
So, am I positive that this was used by the giants? Well, I picked the thing up, and it's 3 feet in length, and it's 28 pounds, and it was a lance.
How far could you throw it? How could a normal human being your size, how far could you throw that?
Not far at all. Not far at all. I mean, it was extremely unwieldy. Now, remember, we didn't have it. It wasn't on a haft. It wasn't mounted. But just the weight of that thing. I mean, it's 30 pounds, 28 pounds. It's a lot of weight, and it's 3 feet long, and it's ancient. I mean, whoever made this, it was cold pounded. I mean, in the film, Christian really does a wonderful job of sort of demystifying it, but also with the isotopic ratios and what they show where it's from is extremely telling. Just like many of these artifacts that we see, some of them are hidden in plain sight. Others are, kind of hustled away, like the 39-day stone that we have in America's Stonehenge. So there it is, and it's got numerals on it. It was found, and that site is incredibly enigmatic. It's right here in America, in New Hampshire, America's Stonehenge. It was also called Mystery Hill. We might be going back in there to film because, again, we've discovered some things which are very, very enigmatic about that site. But here's the deal. The 39-day stone points to the Feast of Beltane, which is 39 days after the equinox. Then you come to May 1st. Native Americans knew nothing about Beltane, the celebration of Baal.
Interesting.
Nothing about it. And we've discovered not only there at America's Stonehenge, but we've discovered another site in the Americas, which, get this, on May 1st, and we filmed it, on May 1st and November 1st. So you've got the spring equinox and the fall equinox. You've got them sitting right there. The sun comes right over at the spring equinox. It comes right over the gate, right over the gate. Bam! How was that possible? And that's, of course, is the celebration of Beltane. So there it is. It's hidden. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people go to these sites every year. They have no idea what they're looking at. They read the placards and the signs that tell us that Native Americans did this or that, but they didn't. And here's something incredibly mysterious about America's Stonehenge. When you sit there at the center of their henge, the center of their site, and you look to where the 39-day stone, the bow stone, is. That's the only standing stone. Get this, George. It's the only standing stone on the site which has been toppled. It's on the ground. Every other standing stone, and there's probably 20 of them, they're still erect. They're there. But the bow stone, the one that points to the basically Beltane, okay, May 1st, is toppled. And that's what got me thinking. That's what really got me thinking. So we might be going back there at some point and conducting an archaeological dig and just seeing what lies beneath it.
Well, I know you've thought about this quite a bit, and it may be in a future film. But in your opinion, what the heck do you think is going on?
I think there's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. I think it points to supernatural intervention. We may differ on what we call that. Some people want to say it's ET that's doing it. Myself, these are extra-dimensional, interdimensional entities. They're not from another planet. They're from another dimension. So we can argue that till the cows come home, but we do agree that something's going on. Somebody, some entity is coming here with technology that we don't have today, and that can manipulate space-time, matter, and energy. That their knowledge of advanced geometry, spherical trigonometry, and we show this in an upcoming film, spherical trigonometry. So we're looking at something that's whoever constructs some of these sites, whoever manipulates the granite or the stones at Sacsayhuaman, removes these things. They have technology which we don't have today. We just don't. We've got cranes and diamond saws and all this other stuff. Show me how to build a 20-foot wall. And when we're down there once again at Ollantaytambo with Andre Agassi, and we're looking at some of these cuts in the stone, it's like the machine is somebody's almost like they're practicing with the machine. It's bizarre. It's like it goes in, it cuts, and everything is perfectly symmetrical. So how is it done? So there's this hidden history, and it's not only in Peru, it's in the Americas, it's over in Europe. It's a global phenomenon, and that's why we're on the trail.
Do you accept the principles of the Bible, L.A.? Some people don't.
Completely. Yeah, completely. I think that the biblical prophetic, I was just on a show this morning, and being pummeled by people sort of from the other side of the aisle who were talking about, psychic this and spirit guides. And I've lived that too. I mean, I was immersed in the New Age. My third eye was open. I lived in an ashram for 3 years. I was with a guru. I had spirit guides, as I mentioned. So I've been on the other side of the aisle. And then at the ripe age of 30 years old is when everything began to change. And that's when I gave my life to Jesus. And it was unlike any, I had no idea what to expect, actually. And what happened to me was very similar to a Paul on the road of Damascus. It was very intense, very severe. And I was in sort of like a spiritual boot camp for 3 years. I had two mentors who mentored me. Both men one was old enough to be my father. The other one was old enough, too. He's 20 years older than me, Wayne Kendall. And these men sort of groomed me, mentored me, taught me what to look for, and helped me through a very intense 3 years, very intense period of my life. So that's my foundation. That's 43 years ago, George. I'll be 73 in December. So that's 43 years ago. And the experience has only gotten more intense. It hasn't lessened. It hasn't waned or gone away or changed. And it's just gotten even more intense, and to the point where what was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding. I'm talking about the prophetic implications of the biblical narrative. They're unfolding right in front of us today. It's all around us if we have eyes to see.
Let's go to the phones. Let's start with first-time caller Melissa in the state of Virginia. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, L.A. I'm so glad to get to talk to you. I watch you all the time.
Hi, Melissa.
I first found you on Prophecy Watch, and then since the church is so clueless about most of the things you talk about, I was so glad that somebody was doing this. I know that we we lost Rob Skiba, so that just leaves you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Two things I wanted to talk to you about. I believe that we're going to find more and more things of what you're talking about, even in America. I know that I was just watching something like yesterday even, and I was not aware of it. I think it's called the Bat Cave Stone or the Bat something stone, and it's it's 2 hours from me over here in Knoxville.
Yeah, the Bat Creek Stone, that's what it's called.
Okay. Yeah, that's just up the road here for me, and I believe that they had translated that to say for the Judeans or for Judah, and they were saying that was evidence that, Jews had even been here in America. But I think we all know what's going on with what you're talking about. And the people that are not in our camp do not want the rest of the world to know that the Bible is true, that these fallen angels were here. So every bit of it, has either been hidden, covered up, and what can be carried off to the stone, certain places has been carried off there. And then, the Jesuit theater we call media just lies to the people.
Your thoughts, L.A.?
Well, the Bat Creek Stone and some of these other artifacts that were found, they're very controversial. There were a lot of hoaxes done in the 19th century. There was this push and pull between one camp, which was saying that some of the mounds and the artifacts that were here in the Americas, they seem to predate the Native American culture. And we have on record Native Americans stating on the record that, no, we didn't build the octagon mound or the circle mound or the serpent mound. We didn't do any of this. It was here when we got here. And some of these ancient sites were then used as secondary burials for Native Americans, or they would repurpose them, just like the Egyptians did with some of the obelisks and the sites found in Egypt and other places throughout the globe, just like the Inca repurposed Sacsayhuaman. So this is something which happens all on a global level. But the bottom line is there was this sort of war between two factions, and the faction that won out, which is now the prevailing paradigm, which is absolutely sacrosanct. In fact, if you want to become an archaeologist, in many of the textbooks, the first thing you learn about is that there were no giants in America. Well, why are you telling me this? And I've gone toe-to-toe with some of these people. The Smithsonian's own records from the 1900s talk about the exhumation of 7, 8, 9 footers, in some places even taller than that, 10, 11, 12 feet. So we know that they did exist. But what happened was Cyrus Thomas said, no. This is what happened. No one came over here before. This is all Native American. They just forgot that they had done all this. And that's the prevailing paradigm, which is an incredible insult to First Nation oral tradition. So my argument has been this. If Native Americans built these sites, surely they would have some knowledge of it in their oral tradition. You would hear it, but it's not there. And we've got several First Nation people, Chief Joseph Riverwind for one, Doris, who is with us also. She's Native American First Nation people. And both of them say, no, we had nothing to do with this. This was done before we got here. And the vestiges of it remain. We don't know what happened to the people. There were some articles that I was reading very recently, just on my own show, George, and talking about different artifacts, different places, different ruins that were found. The Native Americans always say the same thing. There was a race of very tall white giants that were here, and somehow they disappeared. And this is the nexus of something that I'm researching, because, like I said earlier, we hear this, it's on a global level, that something happens, and just like that, they're gone. They're just gone.
Poof.
Like they just here.
East of the Rockies, Brian's with us in the state of Indiana. Hi, Bri.
Hey, George. Good morning. How are you?
Okay, my friend. Thanks.
Hey, good. Hey, Ali, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for calling in.
Sure. Hey, Ali, I got a question about the ancient Viking swords from way back when. Now, when archaeologists found these swords, they were amazed that they dated back so early, like 800 AD to 1000 AD. But they were really amazed by the purity of the swords. Now, the swords were so pure that the iron ore had to be heated up to almost like 3,000 degrees. Now, they got these from they say the Frankish Empire until they put an embargo on it because the Vikings were just wreaking havoc, as we all know. But I'm just curious if you've ever looked into these ancient swords that the Vikings had and the purity of the metal from, so pure to way back then. And I'll take my answer off the air.
Actually, to be honest with you, I've never looked into that, those swords that you're talking about. I know of them, but I've never done any research there. There's so much to look at. There's so many places to go, and there's just not enough years. There's not enough time in a person's lifetime to do it all. So we sort of pick and choose. That's something that I kind of know about, but I've never done a deep dive there, never done any research there. So I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Ellie, you talked about that there could be a part 2 of Out of Place Artifacts, the film. How many other artifacts did you find that you didn't put into this first one?
Well, there's a few. It's not like we've got, stacks and stacks of these things, but there are a few that we've looked at. For instance, we were just talking about the Backcrete Stone, that we could do a deep dive there. We could do the Newark Holy Stones in Newark, Ohio, which I've been to both sites. I've seen a replica of the Backcrete Stone, and I've been in the museum with the Newark Holy Stones. I'm still weighing in on what's called the Newark Holy Stones. I lean towards forgery, although we've had people on both sides of the aisle. Some people believe that they're the real deal. Others believe that they're hoaxes. So, we don't know. Those are just two examples. The Backcrete Stone is certainly another one where we look at that and wonder. The skeleton that was found in one of the what's the name of the mound? Oh, it's in West Virginia, but I'll think of it in a second. But the skeleton was found in this chamber. So when they went into the chamber, they realized that, get this, that the dirt was compacted somehow with such a degree of compaction that they didn't need to shore up the walls.
George Norrie, along with L.A. Marzulli. His website is lamarzulli.net, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Back to the phones we go. Let's go to Amy in Buffalo, New York. Hello, Amy. Welcome to the program.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. How are you?
Sure. Great.
Good. I kind of have a question for him because the spring equinox, for 2024 is actually going to be March 19th, and it's going to be at 11:06 p.m. That's the Eastern Standard Time.
You're good.
Last year, of course, it was like the 20th or 21st. I know it changes from year to year, but he stated a date that was totally off, so I'm kind of confused about that. And also, he's talking about Beltane. Beltane is also called May Day, which was an ancient European festival for like the first day of spring. Technically, it falls between the middle part of the summer solstice and the spring equinox. So,
L.A., what do you think of those?
Well, I totally get it. What we're saying is the 39-day stone, and we understand that things move. The equinoxes change. The solstice can change a day or two every year. I understand all that. We're saying that this particular site, America Stonehenge, is about 4,000 years old. So we have to go back, and there's ways to do that, obviously. But the 39-day stone is from it's from working backwards from May 1st, going back to where the spring equinox would take place, and that's what the whole purpose of a 39-day stone is, and it points to Beltane, which is a Celtic holiday, Celtic feast day. Which, if it's true, and that's where there's also another site which I won't mention, where the gateway opens up directly on May 1st. The sun is right there on May 1st. So something's going on with this. And we know that Native Americans did not celebrate Beltane, and that's why that's incredible. That gets back into Eastern Europe. It gets back into the Levant area where the celebration of Baal. It also gets out of place artifact. We talk about this in the film. The Baal stone, which was found at America's Stonehenge, written in Iberian Punic,